Ciao a tutti. Welcome to another episode of Wild Wild Podcast. And this time, I'm very pleased to welcome back to the podcast my incredibly patient co-host, Professor Rod Barnett.
Oh, Professor! I've now got I've got a title of a sort. I'm impressed. Okay,
Professore. Yeah, welcome everybody. So we've had a couple of kind of in-between episodes recently. I did an interview with Elia Ferroli, who is the founder of Malombra Films. I don't know if you've listened to that, great. If you haven't, do go back and have a listen to that one. They are crowdfunding their first Blu-ray release, The Sex of Angels, and they're about 50% there, so do have a look at that. It's on Indiegogo. And then also, I just posted an episode of me basically wandering around Italy last week. And it was so hot. Oh dear. There were a few things I forgot to record, actually, because half the time my brain wasn't really functioning properly because it was too hot. But also, I think that might have made it run on a bit too long. But it was really fun anyway. So if anyone's listened to that, then thank you for doing that. But very pleased to now be back on to our Polizia Teschi films. But before we get to that, as it's been a little while, I'm trying to think when we did Revolver. That was
about a month ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, about a month ago. So, Rod, do you want to briefly give us a rundown on what you've been up to in the last month?
Oh my goodness! I guess the only thing of real interest or note is my return to the annual Monster Bash convention up in Pittsburgh, the end of June.
Classic. Always
fun. Lots of people that I only get to see there, and a lot of camaraderie and joking and laughing and drinking and talking and staying up far too late. Only partially marred by my Friday night kidney stone attack, which was terrible. But you learn to live with this kind of crap.
I see. Wow, that's some real life horror there.
It's some real life, groaning in pain and taking painkillers and wondering why you were cursed with such an affliction. But yeah,
it would have been good if that had happened during a screening of something like Alien or something like that.
Well, I mean, I have
really immersive.
I have described in the past having a kidney stone attack as feeling as if there is a very toothy and clawy creature inside your body attempting to rip its way out your side. It's a lot of fun. I highly recommend it to absolutely no one.
Isn't Friday night normally Mexican movie night?
Yeah, this was well after that. This woke me up. This woke me up out of a sound sleep, which is the way kidney stones love to attack. They lay in wait, and then once you're comfortable and snoozing very, very effectively, they attempt to rip themselves through your body and kill you. So yeah, it's great.
Nice, very nice. So that aside, were there any celebrities or anything like that at the Monster Bash this year?
Yeah, actually, Caroline Munro was there. She's there every few years, and she's always a joy, of course. And also another Harryhausen alum, Patrick Wayne, who is a much rarer sight, I have to admit.
That's John Wayne's son, right?
Yeah. He was in Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger, as well as quite a lot of other films. But my joy was I only had questions for him about the rather well, how should I put this? The film, we'll call it a film, Beyond Atlantis, which he was highly amused to talk about. I'm far from the only one to quiz him about this particular movie, but I did ask some pointed questions about co-star Sid Haig, and he loved Sid. He and Sid apparently got along very well, and apparently may have remained in touch for years and years after the fact. But he also had very kind words for his female co-star, who he clearly had lustful eyes for. So,
I think I've seen Beyond Atlantis. Is that a '60s movie?
No, early
When
'70s
was that?
or
Oh, is
mid
it?
'70s. I think like
I might be
'74.
thinking
I
of
think.
maybe it's another Atlantis film I'm
But
thinking
yeah,
of.
it's one of those Filipino shot things
Oh,
with John Ashley.
right, no, I'm thinking of a different one.
Yeah, well, when I say Filipino shot John Ashley film, I've only narrowed it down to roughly 50 movies. So, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that sounds like fun. Obviously, Caroline Munro is always delightful and loves meeting her fans and seems to be at Monster Bash and those kind of things all the time.
Yeah.
Don't know how she has time for anything else. Over here, she is a regular presenter on Talking Pictures TV, where she has her own kind of horror host slot.
Oh,
So she introduces horror film double bills on Talking Pictures, which is pretty cool.
I had no idea about. Oh, that's
Yeah.
very cool.
So yeah, so she's still working in that from that point of view. Cool. Well, yeah, and getting to Pittsburgh, that must be like me traveling across Europe. I mean, that's far away for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a full day's drive. It's a long drive. I have on occasion in the past flown up, but the freedom to actually have your car while you're there, so that you can, go out to other places. Because I have friends who live in the Pittsburgh area, and so going up a little bit early or staying an extra day and being able to actually see some folks that you don't normally get to see is part of it as well. But yeah, it's
And
a long drive.
it also means you can fill your car up with all the stuff that you buy when you're
That is always a plus.
there.
I have in past years. This was, I guess, about 20 years ago now. God, I'm getting old. I have flown to an event of that type. I can't remember which one it was, where I purchased far too much, and so availed myself of the ability to like box it all up and mail it to myself, rather than attempt to
Yeah.
lie my way onto the plane with something, claiming it was like a human heart on its way to a hospital or something.
Yeah, I mean, I had a similar problem coming back from Italy. I bought, I basically went out with one bag and came home with two because I bought so much junk.
Yeah, it'll happen.
Mostly books, but some of which I can't read. But it was fun anyway. But right, anyway, I won't go on about that because hopefully people will have listened to me bang on about that in the last episode. Let's get to our film for this week. The film with a few different titles, but we'll go with the young, well, I've heard it said young, violent, dangerous, or young, violent, and dangerous. In Italian, it is Liberi, armati, pericolosi, which actually translates, from what I can tell, as free, armed, and dangerous. So slightly different translation, actually. But yeah, this is a film that I was previously unfamiliar with. I picked up the Blu-ray from Cineploit, an Austrian company, and I just sort of bought it almost on a whim, really, because I liked the cover. And I had no idea who was in it, what it was about, except it was obviously a police thriller. But I knew very little about it until I actually put it on to watch it to do this. Is this a film that you were already familiar with, Rod?
Oh yeah, I've seen this film 2 or 3 times in the
Okay.
past. I forget exactly. I think I may have seen it as a bootleg originally, but I've owned the DVD for a while, and I at least the DVD that Raro released over here in the States,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to admit, I was a little shocked when I started to look around the internet before we started talking about this movie to learn that it's kind of, I wouldn't say looked down upon, but it's considered one of the lesser of this genre, and I think that's a little ridiculous. I'm not going to hide the fact that I'm really impressed by this film. I've always liked it, but at the same time,
great.
yeah, it's a fantastic film. But at the same time, it's one of those things where I think that what causes some people who are fans of the of this particular genre to kind of push themselves away from it is that it is also a combination of another genre, because it is almost half and half police procedural, cop movie, and kind of a throwback to the juvenile delinquent films of the 50s and 60s. It's got, I mean, that's the engine driving this entire thing, is these juvenile delinquent lunatics kind of doing insane things, and it's I think it's that aspect of it. That, and I think that some people consider it a bit of a bait and switch, because if you look at the classic poster art for the film, I think a lot of people think, aha, it's going to be it's going to be Tomas Milian, tracking down and murdering scumbags like he did in about, I don't know, 10 other movies in the 1970s.
This is not your Dirty Harry ripoff like some of the others.
No, it's not. It's a different kind of animal.
And I mean, Tomas Milian, I didn't even recognize him to begin with. I was watching this film thinking, oh, is Tomas Milian in this? Which one is he? And I was looking at the three criminals because I just assumed he'd be one of those. And I'd completely looked past the fact that, oh yeah, he looked so different. He looks more sort of middle-aged here, whereas in the other films that we've seen him in, and the ones that we've covered and many others, he tends to be the kind of younger, crazy guy, and he often has that eye shade, the eyeliner, and he's got curly hair and a beard. And in this film, he just looks so different. I honestly didn't recognize him.
It's amazing
about half an hour in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, but it's amazing what a haircut and a three-piece suit will do to change the look of someone, isn't it?
Yeah, and he sort of dropped the eyeliner as well, sort of the makeup. But it was funny last week. So when I was in Italy, and I'd turn on the TV at night, and a few times I caught old movies, and Tomas Milian popped up a couple of times, and I don't know what the film was, but he was wearing a really long kind of Doctor Who scarf. It looked like he was walking around New York. He had curly hair and a big scarf and a beard, and it looked like it was quite funny. And I don't know if that description sounds anything to you.
That honestly, that rings a bell. I think that's. See,
I don't know which one it was, but
I wish I could remember more clearly that the individual films that he starred in as often a cop, but sometimes as a scumbag. And I think the film you're talking about, I have a vague memory of something that what you're describing as being in a particular film where he's playing a cop, but Milian's performance in that I would describe as one of his most disappointing. If I can only remember what film it was, because I remember watching the movie and going, Milian did not want to be here.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed, I don't know what it was. I only watched a bit of it because I couldn't really tell what it was, but it seemed like it was quite comedic. It was closer to an Italian comedy than a decent kind of cop thriller. But he was very much in the overacting, crazy Tomas Milian mode.
Oh well, then this is definitely not the film I'm thinking.
So very different from this movie, where he's completely unrecognizable. There's an interesting interview with the director on the Blu-ray, I don't know how to pronounce it, Romolo Guerrieri, something like that. But it's also repeated a similar story is repeated in the Roberto Curti book, where basically Tomas Milian was sort of hesitant about taking this role because it was so different from his usual sort of thing. And So the director talked to him, and basically he encouraged him to get rid of the curly hair, comb his hair down, get rid of the makeup, shave a bit, so he's just got the moustache, and he looks so different. And he said that after they had the premiere, Tomas Milian came up to him and hugged him and thanked him because he'd seen himself on screen as a completely different, like this kind of. I suppose if you get used to watching Tomas Milian in a certain type of film, you just think, oh, that's the only kind of thing he can do. But then watching this movie, it's like, no, actually, he was a really good actor. He's doing something completely different here. He could be very different.
He was an exceptional actor. And
Yeah.
it is roles like this where he's. I would have thought that as an actor he would have wanted to do something like this because it's so different in tone and texture from what he'd been doing, in so many other films at the time, that it would show his range and also kind of give him a chance to stretch. I mean, there's no way to get lazy if you're having to kind of rethink what you're doing when the camera's on you for a role. You have to kind of, come up with a different way to present yourself. And, this was, I don't know how many, I don't know how many performances of his that I've seen. I think that before I saw his cop movies, his crime movies in the 70s, I was primarily focused on him in the various spaghetti westerns that he did.
Right.
And then so I'm used to the mode that he is in when he's doing those. And so when I started to see him as, especially in this movie, you start to see him as having real range and having the ability to play a lot of different kinds of emotions and even though let's be clear, as interesting a character as he plays in this movie, the character doesn't even have a name.
Yeah.
He's just the commissioner. That's it.
Yeah. He's so serious, and he has this look of kind of despair on his face a lot of the time, and he knows, even when he keeps being confronted with more dead bodies, and he's just like kind of resigned to the fact that he's not, like you said, he's not just going out guns blazing, despite the poster. But the poster is actually fab. I'm using the poster for this film as our podcast thumbnail. So that is the image from this movie. But well, let's also, before we get into the plot, should we just mention Romolo Guerrieri? Oh dear,
the director,
Mr. Romolo. He's quite. Do you have any particular experience with his other films that he's been involved in? He seems like he was assistant director on a lot of Peplum films before he got started.
As director, I've seen a few of his movies. Sweet Body of Deborah, but I haven't seen that in a long time.
I'm not sure I've ever seen that one.
Recommended.
Yeah, that's one of the Carol Baker Jolly, isn't it?
Yeah, with an Ernesto Gastaldi script.
Right.
So once again, I think he wrote the story, and I think he may have co-written the script. I highly recommend anything that has that man's name attached to it. Johnny Yuma, I think I've seen, but it's been a long time. I think I've seen one other of his cop movies. I think I saw The Police Serve the Citizens. But once again, long time ago, to the point where I have almost no memory of it. It's just that when I'm looking at the cast list, I'm going, I know I've seen that film somewhere before.
Yeah.
But interesting to note that as a director, he had fewer than 20 credits officially. As a writer, fewer than 10. But he seems to have had a really strong niche. I mean, he seemed to go from genre to genre, but he had a niche within the film community there in Italy, so that he, for a long period of time, was working pretty regularly from the 60s all the way up through the 90s. So,
yeah, he seems to have retired about 30 years ago. But from what I can tell, he's still alive, and the interview that's on the disc with him was only done about 2 years ago.
And of course, just to entice you for future viewing that I do not want to be a part of, he did make a movie in '82 called The Gorilla.
That looks amazing. Have you read the plot summary for that?
See, that's just it. I read the plot synopsis and did not go, that looks amazing. I read the plot synopsis and went, I don't want to be anywhere near this.
Okay, well, we have to read that now for the listeners. Ruby has been trained in martial arts by her father and now has a job safeguarding a wide range of people and their valuables. A clumsy artist named Adelmo falls for Ruby at first sight but remains clueless about her profession. Things are complicated by Adelmo's French neighbour and sometime model having a crush on him, and Ruby's father trying to hook up his daughter with various bodybuilders while putting the moves on the French girl. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about, Rod. There's nothing there. There's nothing there that isn't, screaming quality.
It's screaming something. I'll tell you that.
It's a kind of late in the cycle Italian sex comedy that maybe a few years earlier might have starred Edwidge Fenech.
Well, it feels to me like a movie that was made because the Italians were always adapting to whatever was making a lot of money at the time. This feels like definitely a post Porky's kind of film. And so I do wonder how the listen to me. I'm talking myself into watching this damn thing. It does feel as if it's kind of an alteration in the usual way they went about these things.
Yeah.
And I don't know that would necessarily make it more enjoyable for me, but I will admit to having some curiosity to what an 80s Italian, I guess, sex comedy would smell like. I mean, look like.
I mean, I don't think we're going to be fitting that in here anytime soon, but you've always got the bloody pit.
I have a lot of things coming up there, but I don't seem to have a slot for. I don't have a slot there for that. Maybe after I do the gorilla movie with Crash Corrigan, I'll come.
Oh yeah, there you go, double bill. That would work.
Yes,
I mean, perhaps one of the reasons this film is less regarded than other sort of Poliziotteschi films is the cast, because aside from Tomas Milian, there's not really anybody particularly sort of well known, at least outside of Italy. It's quite a small scale film with people that you wouldn't really recognise. None of your classic exploitation names, again, apart from Milian.
And I think that the only actor who really seems to have had a career that people can point to and say, oh well, she was in this and this and this, is the female lead. And the three actors who play the dangerous trio of wilding lunatics is essentially basically the general consensus seems to be that their performances are not up to snuff or one note, and I don't agree with that. I mean, yes, you could argue. I definitely would argue that at least one of the performances of the three is one note, but I also would point out that is exactly what he was being told to do by any stretch. That's exactly the performance he was being told to give. That's true. So blaming the actor for doing what he was told to do is, I think a little ridiculous. But
so you're talking about the character of Gio, I think, aren't you? Benjamin Lev. Who's the one that just cracks jokes and laughs like a lunatic all the time.
Yeah, played by Benjamin Lev.
Who, partway through shooting, the police turned up, arrested him, and then nobody saw him again.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. So they had to film using, it's kind of like the fake Shemp in Evil Dead thing. They just had to film using stand-ins, shooting them from behind to try and fill the gaps where they didn't have him because he was gone.
Which is bizarre because, honestly, I can't tell that that's what they were.
Yeah, I was really surprised to hear that. I did wonder whether that's why they killed him off, but, spoiler, they kill him off.
But how much of a spoiler is it to note that most of the cast list dies? So
yeah, but yeah, it's quite. But I think it was something to do with drugs. But he never acted again after this either. He had two films come out this year and then just basically disappeared. So yeah, it's quite interesting that it seems like his own personal life was quite close to the life of the character he was playing. But this is a film that's quite similar to Savage 3 as well, I think. But shall we, I'll go through the plot here from Roberto Curti's book, the Italian crime filmography. And then let's see if there's anything on here that we want to pick up on. So yeah, so as you mentioned, we've got these three guys, the blonde, and we've got who's played by Mario Fara. Then we've got Gio, who's the kind of lunatic, and Luigi, who is basically the driver of the trio. He's good at nicking cars, and he's a good getaway driver.
Mm-hmm.
And the film starts actually, although this isn't in the book here. It sort of starts with the girlfriend who you've mentioned, Leah, played by Eleonora Giorgi, and she's gone to the police because she's heard that her boyfriend and his friends are going to hold up a petrol station and using fake guns, and she doesn't want her boyfriend getting into trouble, so she's gone to the police to try and get the police to stop it before it happens. That's kind of where we start, but, well, it turns out that they're not fake guns after all. And so like he says here, so these three middle-class Milanese youths, yes, we are in Milan here with this one again.
Yeah.
So they go to this petrol station, and it all goes pear-shaped because the police are there, and then they start shooting, and the police start shooting, and we end up with, I think, 2 police dead, the petrol station employees dead, and they flee. Then they rob a bank where they kill 2 more people, and then they go to this guy's house.
And then they go to the guy they buy guns from. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And he's living in this sort of villa, and we're introduced to this guy, but he's in bed with 2 women who are asleep, all naked, and these guys are outside with 3 other guys that they've met up with, who I'm not sure we even get their names. So now we've got a gang of 6, plus this guy who's the arms dealer. They go into his house, and whilst they're waiting for him to get dressed, they start partying with these girls. And there's quite a funny scene where they're all sort of in bed together under the sheets, and it's all going crazy. And then they're running around the house, and one of the girls is in a suit of armor for some reason.
Yeah, somehow they convinced her to put her naked self inside a suit of armor.
And they tie the other one up, and it's all relatively good-natured fun, if your idea of good-natured fun is sort of toxic masculinity writ large. But yeah, the guys are all just getting very carried away. But the guy who's the blondie or blonde, he's sort of quite removed from all this. He's the one who seems to be stepping back. Luigi, likewise, who's the driver, he also doesn't seem to be joining in with all this macho heterosexual fun.
Yeah.
And I think later on we start to realise that there's clearly unspoken feelings between these 2 guys, and that might explain why Luigi is sticking around with his 2 friends despite the fact that they've just murdered a bunch of people. Because it's important to say, Luigi didn't pull the trigger on anybody. He's just the driver.
Yeah.
But it's a very interesting dynamic between these 3 guys. You've got Gio, who's just a nutter, and then Luigi and Blonde, who seem to have these sort of unspoken feelings that they don't know what to do
it's
with.
interesting to me that on this go round rewatching this film, the most interesting thread to me, just to pluck out and pay attention to the way it threads through the entire movie, was the homosexual attraction between those 2 characters, and the kind of repressed feelings, the obvious, this is the 70s, so we're talking about gay fear here. We're talking about something that also can't be ignored. The film underlines it a couple of times by bringing it out as the kind of, you're right to talk about the what we would call these days the toxic masculinity aspect of the way these characters are acting, especially the character played by Benjamin Lev, who is the one who clearly does not have any homosexual concept within himself. He's just he's the one who's more than happy to sling around any epithet, and so he's the he's kind of he's the roving voice of toxic masculinity within the film, because he's also just completely clueless about the fact that, what he is talking about and what he is making fun of on occasion is something he's standing right next to most of the time. He's
Oh yeah, because he does actually. They later on, um, they come across two men camping in the middle of some woods,
yeah.
and he sort of makes jokes about the fact that they
Yeah,
must be gay.
yeah, he makes the giant leap that these two
Yeah,
guys are obviously gay, and it turns out that they're father and son. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. But yeah, he's clearly completely oblivious to what's his friends.
well, like I say, that to me on a rewatch is one of the more interesting things to watch for, because once you realize that is what's underpinning uh, some of the motivations of the let's just call him the kill crazy lunatic who's leading these three. Once
Yeah,
you realize that he's dealing with his own homosexual feelings and not actually knowing how to deal with them in any really good way at all,
yeah,
uh, you start to see why certain things happen. And like I say, the movie doesn't have someone standing there and telling you this is why this is happening. It's just once you look at the cause and effect of certain things, it becomes obvious. For instance, after they pick up guns from this guy who's selling them the guns, they decide to go and knock over this supermarket in the middle of the day, which to me says, whoa, they're nuts. And they go to this place, but the guy who sold them the guns has insisted that the other that he go along in another car, and his three accomplices also go along, so that it's like essentially six of them who go in, and the guy who sold them the gun waiting outside in the car. And once they get inside there, everything's going swimmingly as far as no bullets being fired really, except just at the ceiling to scare everybody.
yeah.
Until one of the new people who've been brought along on this looks at this, it looks at oh gosh, what is
The blonde,
yeah, the blonde character,
just blonde. Yeah,
the leader of this group of kill crazy lunatics. And they've clearly succeeded. They're about to leave the building, and he looks at him and makes a kissing face at him. He kind of throws him a kiss, and this instantly makes him dead, because our blonde leader of the trio kills him, and then the rest of them open up on the other two guys, and so the only ones who exit are our original trio of guys who go out to the cars. The guy who sold them the guns is sitting there in the car, asks, well, where are the other guys?
It's like, well, yeah, wait for my guys, and then they just say sorry and shoot him.
Yeah, and so without this could have been in the blonde fellow's it could have been in his head all along to do this, to get rid of these people, but it does play as if that kind of effeminate winking at him in this time of high adrenaline rush is what causes him to kill these other guys. Not that he seems to need much invitation to just start slaughtering human beings, but that trigger moment right there is really, really instructive.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, and so once you notice that, I mean, if you skip past that and don't notice it, that, like I say, there are more than a few other moments in the movie, and of course, then later in the movie, the female lead played by
Eleonora Georgi.
Yeah, she's kind of amazing. She had a very long career, and I really do like her performance in this movie, because man, has she got some hard lifting to do here in some of these scenes.
It's quite a thankless role that she has.
Some of the things she's asked to do are rough.
Yeah.
In that, I mean, as an actor, because she has to kind of communicate two or three different things at the same time, sometimes within just the space of a couple of lines of dialogue, and she's pretty darn good at it. And I'm really kind of impressed by her. I mean, I remember her from Inferno, Argento's Inferno.
Oh yeah.
and a few other movies along the way. But this is the movie where I think she stands out as someone who, you know, there's a reason. In other words, I see the reasons that she probably had a long career.
Yeah.
There's some ability here. There's some attention to detail as far as performance is concerned. But she at a certain point in conversation with the driver character, who is essentially he's Luigi, right? He's
Luigi.
He's
her
ostensibly her boyfriend, and she just flat out tells him, "Look, I can see what's going on here. That there's that there's a homosexual attraction." She doesn't use that word.
Yeah,
but she essentially says
she says you love him, or you're you're in love with each other. Yeah,
yeah, and so she's the one that's it's impossible for her to miss. It's both because of the relationship she already has with the third guy here, but also because she can see it in every way. Also, it's just all the way in which she's treated. She's not treated in any kind of vicious or mean-spirited way. It's like she's not getting slapped around. She's not getting physically abused, but she is, they do take her. She is kidnapped. She is forced to go along with this situation.
I think they start to suspect that she's been talking to the police because the police know what's going on, and obviously she tipped them off right at the beginning. So the police know who all these guys are.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great scene earlier in the film when the commissario, the commissioner, has brought their parents in. And he's sitting there with the parents of these guys, trying to understand what's happened to them. Why are they doing this? Because also, Leah says to him at one point, you should be asking what makes these guys do this. Why are they doing this? Which also reminded me of Savage 3, where it's a sort of similar thing. Where why are these guys who are perfectly successful and they've got jobs and why are they doing this stuff? And it's a sort of similar thing here, quite trying to understand what's driving these guys who've got perfectly fine lives to go on this robbery and murder spree. And so he's talking to them, and then the dad of one of them, I forget which one it is, the mother has died, and so he's just bringing him up on his own. And when he sort of asks him what's what's happened here, and he says how he's always traveling and he has to go and work and he's not at home, and he says to the commissioner, basically, I either look after him or I provide for him. So I'm either there or I'm providing for him. And Tomas Milian does this brilliant speech about how basically it's their fault that these guys are doing what they're doing. That it's the parents have let them down. Mm-hmm. They weren't there for them. I've got it here actually. There's a translation of it here. He says, talking to your children, listening to them. When you don't talk, the problems start. The weakest ones use drugs. The more violent and disturbed ones start killing people for no reason. If your son is a monster, it's your fault for not having given him the necessary love and support. And he really lays it on thick. These parents are left in no doubt whatsoever that they've created monsters.
Oh, I know, and the way he wraps it up by saying, and now we have to go out and take care of these monsters you've created.
So they go on the run after the shopping robbery, or the supermarket robbery. They try and get false passports from these guys in a scrapyard who clearly just deal in false passports. But by this point, their trail of destruction means they're very well known to the police and everyone knows who they are, so they won't give them passports. So
this is the point in the movie where the film touches on their attempts to. This is the only contact they really have with what you could call organized crime.
Yeah,
and the organized crime people who had agreed. I mean, they had the passports made up for them and everything beforehand because this deal was struck. A couple of weeks before. They want nothing to do with them because they're too well known now.
Yeah. So Blonde jumps behind the wheel, and then basically they gun them down. They gun one of them down and chase the other guy around, and then crush him against a pile of cars. Mm-hmm. But then one of the cars that's stacked is really good. The scene is really good, I think. There's a car stacked on top of the pile, and it falls down and lands on their car. I think by this point we may have already had a car chase as well.
A small one.
We've had a couple. There's a couple of really good car chases in this movie.
There's one brilliant one that's about 55 minutes into the movie. Holy crap, it's great.
Yeah, that might be here when they're trying to escape to Switzerland, and so they're sort of trying to get out of Milan, but all the roads are blocked, and so yeah, there's a really good car chase. There's cops chasing them. There's cars getting wrecked. Um, there's cars jumping down staircases and all kinds of cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
Well,
very exciting.
that's the thrill ride moment, I think, in this movie that, fans of this genre who weren't looking for a juvenile delinquent film about latent homosexuality might actually enjoy.
Yeah, yeah, it's very good. And there's one point where Luigi pulls off this really cool move, and Blonde looks at him with such kind of respect, and
Oh yeah, the
he's so
admiration just
impressed.
beams off of him. Yeah.
Yeah. But eventually, well, they just can't get past the roadblocks, so they they have to they see an old abandoned farmhouse, and they dump the car there.
Oh,
Meanwhile, Luigi.
before we go
Oh
past
yeah,
that car,
go on.
well, let's take note of the fact that that is not actually their car. They borrow this car from what appears to be a wealthy friend,
Oh
and
yeah,
so it's a very expensive car. Is it a Rolls or
I don't
something?
know. Yeah,
I can't remember. I
I
have to go back
I
and look
lose
again.
track because they keep stealing cars all the way through
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, yeah. But
Because at one
this
point they steal a car. They
mhm.
oh no this oh sorry that's after this. Carry on. We'll get to that
Oh,
bit.
but that very expensive car is the one that they crush the guy with in the junkyard, and then the car
Oh
falls on
yeah.
top of it, destroying it. And there's a part of me that goes, "Man, was that planned or was that an accident?"
I know it kind of looks like it just happened when they were filming, doesn't it? Because it looks
It's
genuinely
fantastic.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they steal another car, I think, and then they end up dumping it in this farm and trying to walk. They walk over the fields round the
Yeah, they're
roadblock,
avoiding a roadblock because they.
and but then they steal a car on the other side,
Mhm.
which they're very good at. But then eventually they just can't do it, so they have to walk. And this is where they get into some woods and they meet these campers that we mentioned. All the time as well, Luigi is talking to Leah. He wants Leah to get out of here. He wants her to get away. He knows
Yeah.
what's going to happen, and he wants her to try and escape. But the blonde is determined to keep her there because he thinks she's going to go to the police, and it becomes this. So it's all very tense between them, and because we basically know that they're doomed, but it's just a matter of how doomed, and
Yeah.
who's going to get to them first, or are they going to end up shooting each other? Is she going to get away? Who knows? I don't want to give it all away because I do think this is a film. I mean, I think we've said this probably with all of them. This is definitely a film that people should check out, and perhaps because it's slightly less well known, I don't want to give the entire thing away. Um, Even though,
Yeah.
like you said, it's not that much of a surprise to discover that not everybody makes it to the end.
Well, no, but at the same time, it is a bit of a surprise to just to find that amongst fans of this genre, people who concentrate on this genre, this is there's a certain lack of respect for it in a weird way, and it's very I find that very odd.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I
And
think this is a fantastic film.
yeah, and just to see Thomas Milian almost unrecognizable as a very serious police commissioner who's doing things by the book. He's not, like you said, he's not going rogue.
Well, yeah, I
Um,
mean, a Tomas Milian performance in which he looks like he has had a shower,
yeah,
he has shaved, he's not covered in sweat and grime.
yeah, yeah.
It's kind of a shock.
Yeah, because we've seen him on the other side of this as well when the police are after him. Obviously, I'm thinking of something like Almost Human or something like that,
Yeah,
where
God,
he's the guy.
yeah, what a performance in that.
I know, so different. I'm serious. I was about half an hour in before I twigged that he was the commissioner. I just didn't even
That's
realize it.
bizarre to me, man, because
I didn't even recognize
he
him.
has such an unmistakable face.
But he does. But I'm so used to seeing him with big curly hair and a beard and scruffy clothes that's what I was looking for, I suppose. Not this serious, middle-aged, straight cop. But the only way we know that he's getting rattled is the longer we get on in the film, the more he's pulling his tie down. Like when the film starts, his collar is done up and his tie is all the way up, and then he just keeps loosening it and loosening it, but he never takes his tie off, and he's
Nope.
still got his suit and his waistcoat on, but he just loosens his tie more and more and more. That's about the only sign that he's getting hacked off here. But the ending as well, I don't want to give it away, but it's a really good ending.
Yes,
So
I agree. It's an exceptional ending, and
yeah,
one that you think you know how it's going to end, and it's a little different.
yeah, it's great. So yes, do seek this one out. So I know it's on. So it's on Blu-ray in Europe from a company in Austria. You said it was on Raro DVD in
You here in the
America.
states,
Yeah.
I can't remember. It may be out of print at this point.
Mm. No,
And without
it's
giving
not.
too much away, it's also available for viewing on YouTube. So,
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. There you go. So no one's got any excuses. I think it's. Oh yeah, I'm looking now, and it's also available to watch for 50p on Google Play. So there you go.
and I
Uh,
would just like to say that, as an aside, as a complete and total aside, I had this is the first time I've really looked in depth at the long list of credits of Mr. Milian. I do love his work, and I have to say that there is a part of me that wishes that there was some way that I could very easily put together uh, a viewing party of the American television series that he was in here. Because he was in an episode of Miami Vice in
oh yeah.
'85. He was in an episode. He was in actually a couple of episodes of The Equalizer, also in the '80s.
Oh, nice.
Yes, exactly. He was in an
And
episode of L.A. Law in
mm,
'91.
Murder She Wrote. You're going to
Murder
mention
She
that,
Wrote
aren't
in
you?
'92. Boy, do I
Yeah.
want to see him in that. And then, of course, in the HBO series Oz, he played a particular character in that for a couple of episodes. And
Right.
then turns up in the year 2000 in an episode of Law and Order. Is Holy crap.
Yeah, and because he basically would just get cast as any kind of foreign person, because
Hmm.
we think it's easy to assume he was Italian, but he's actually Cuban.
Yeah, he was Cuban.
Um, and he's American parents, born in Cuba, but spent so long working in Europe, but then went back to America and spent the last, yeah, like 20, 30 years of his career working in America, but generally playing South American type roles. He just had that look that he's a little bit like Ben Kingsley. Like he
Yeah.
can just play any kind of foreigner.
Well, what I
Yeah.
think is amazing is that I mean, through the end of his before he appears to have just said, that enough's enough, and he really kind of stopped taking roles for the most part. I mean, he turns up in a Spielberg film. He's in Amistad.
Yes, which is a
He's in a
good film.
Soderbergh film. He's in Traffic for Soderbergh. Uh, it's he's doing television episodes. And it's bizarre. It's bizarre to note that I wonder if he was just taking roles that interested him at that point. It's so hard to know. I'd
Mm,
love to get a sense of what it was like for him, going from a guest spot on Law and Order to working with Steven Spielberg.
yeah, and yeah, and he only passed away like 5 years ago.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
he's done quite a lot of interviews. There are some good interviews with him on various different discs. But yeah, really cool guy. I've just been now looking through his credits. I've worked it out that the films that I saw him in, there are two films where he plays the character Nico Giraldi. There's one called Little Italy, where
hmm
he's an undercover cop who goes to New York. And also then there was a sequel called Squadra Anti-Gangsters. And
Oh
they're
man,
both
Bruno
directed,
Corbucci made
yeah,
that.
Bruno Corbucci. So that's the ones I saw where he's almost wearing this ridiculous costume as an undercover cop, and he's got this big hat, he's got a massive scarf, he's got the eyeliner, the full thing. Uh, so that's in my head. That's what Thomas Milian looks like. He does not look like he does in Young, Violent, Dangerous. So, but yeah, there you go. So those films were actually a couple of years after he did this one. But
But what a career though,
yeah,
man.
weirdly, he looks younger in those two films than he does in this one.
It's to be honest, I think a lot of that is just in his acting ability.
Yeah,
If he wants to look a certain way, he looks a certain way. And if he wants to look a different way, he does. I mean, the when you think about, it's the same actor in, The Big Gun Down and Face to Face.
yeah. I
And
love The Big Gun Down.
oh, I
So
know, I
good.
love these movies. It's the same actor, and then he's the same actor who is also in Don't Torture a Duckling. He's not to
That's
mention
true.
Almost Human,
Yeah,
but and then the very cool, detached but incredibly effective cop that he plays in something like Syndicate Sadists, where he's in action cop mode big time. He was so good, and like I say, I would have thought that he wouldn't have needed his arm twisted to have a different kind of role
yeah,
like he plays in this. I think it would have been, to my mind, it would be one of those things that an actor who's working so much at that time would have felt like this will be the thing that kind of shakes me out of a rut, makes me do something different. Because at the same time he's starring in films like Tough Cop and The Cynic, the Rat, and the Fist, and you're just like, those are similar kinds of performances, no matter how you slice the films themselves, or which side of the law the character he's playing ends up on. He's really good in this. Like I said, it's interesting that they don't even bother to give the character a first or even a last name. He's just the commissioner.
yeah, yeah. He's pretty amazing,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we haven't seen the last of him either. I
Probably
think,
not.
yeah, our next film on the list is actually Free Hand for a Tough Cop. So that'll be
Oh,
more, yeah, that'll be more Thomas Milian, alongside Claudio Casanelli.
well, let's let people
That's a fun
know.
movie.
Freehand for a Tough Cop. What are the various titles that one's known under, so people can
Oh,
seek it out?
well, so it's also down as Tough Cop, and
So
it's just come
just
out.
that's okay.
It's come out on Blu-ray just recently over here as Free Hand for a Tough Cop,
Okay.
but I think maybe in America it's known as Tough Cop. So yeah, that's our next one, and more Thomas Milian. Again, curly hair, beard, back to normal.
looking like a hippie who somehow managed to become a police officer. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you, Rod, again, for doing this. I really appreciate your insight and the experience of these films that you bring
I don't
to
know about
this.
insight. It's just
Uh,
an observational eye.
yeah, yeah, no, it's good, it's good. So thank you everybody for listening. We will try and get another episode out soon. Um, and yeah, do let us know what your favorite Polizioteschi films are, or your favorite Thomas Milian films are.
Oh
We'd
yeah,
love to.
definitely. That's two lists that I would love to hear about
Yeah.
about
So
from people. Yeah.
so you can email us on wildwildpodcast@gmail.com, or find us on Twitter, the Wild Wild Pod. I think we are. We're also on Instagram. All the links, as usual, are in the show notes. That's it from me. Thank you very much, and that's it also from Rod.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, folks, for listening to the show.
I don't know how to end these things. Um,
You're doing fine. It's cool.
we've been Wild Wild Podcast, and we will be back again soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.